You ready? You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, gays and gays. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. I've got a review for the second in the Beverly Hills Cop saga, in Beverly Hills Cop II, which I'm realizing I did not even mention the director of the first film. That kind of makes me feel like a dick. The director of the first film, I'll do it here, was Martin Brest. Brest? I'm gonna go Brest. You know him from directing he directed Son of a Woman, really? Huh. He did direct Meet Joe Black, that's right. So he directed Son of a Woman, Beverly Hills Cop, obviously, Midnight Run, Meet Joe Black, which I think is actually I actually think it's an underrated flick. I like Meet Joe Black. Oh, he directed Geely, though. Oh, that's unfortunate. Damn, wow, and that was back in '03. Shit, sometimes it just takes one. That sucks. Yeah, not a great movie. But Beverly Hills Cop 2 is directed by Tony Scott, which I was kind of flabbergasted to realize. I did not know Tony Scott directed the second one of these. May he rest in peace. He was a producer on Unstoppable and Domino, two films I absolutely adore. He had directed Top Gun, which of course went on to be, a classic. True Romance, another film. Well, one film I adore, because I adore True Romance. I do not adore Top Gun. And then he's been an executive producer on a lot of stuff that I like The Good Wife, Stoker, which if you haven't seen Stoker, I highly recommend. Of course, directed Denzel in Deja Vu, Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, just to name a few. Spy Game, which is also very underrated. Enemy of the State. Tony Scott's done a lot of shit I adore. Man on Fire, of course. So it's kind of crazy to go like, oh wow, this is like early Tony Scott. Actually, as far as his directing, I'm trying to see. It's not his first film. Oh wow, that's crazy. So he goes from Top Gun into Beverly Hills Cop 2. That's wild. To go ahead and have those films back to back, and he does Days of Thunder, which I think Days of Thunder is very underrated, as is The Last Boy Scout. You will not. Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna go through a couple Tony Scott films real quick. So he starts off with Top Gun in '86. He directs Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone music video, which that is one of those songs that is so easy to get stuck in your head. Does Beverly Hills Cop 2 in '87. Days of Thunder and Revenge in 1990. Last Boy Scout in '91. True Romance in '93. Crimson Tide in '95. The Fan in '96. Enemy of the State in '98. I almost said Enema of the State. I don't know why I went Blink-182. That's where my brain goes to first. And then goes ahead and does a Spy Game a couple years later. So that's a hell of a run as far as films. So Axel Foley is back. He's back in Beverly Hills. And what I like about the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy, oh man, you know what? I'll wait till the third one. I don't want, do I want to reveal? You know what? Fuck it, I'll reveal it here. Maybe a hot take. You know what? No, never mind. I'm gonna wait. But what I will say is, I actually like this film more than I like the first one, and there's a couple reasons for that. So, one, right out the gate, you already have the dynamic established. We know who Axel Foley is. He's coming off of the success of the first film, and so he's getting a little more rope from Inspector Todd. A little more rope, not a ton more rope, but he's getting a little more rope, and you can tell that finding those murderers and closing that case, that went ahead and went a long way in the eyes of the higher ups in the Detroit police department and the city of Detroit in general. It seems like he's able to go out in the field a little more. Um, he's not being trusted as much, but because of the cachet that he kind of carries now, because of the events in the first film, it does feel like he's able to maneuver a little easier than he was in the first film, which is a very which is a necessary and also not a surprising dynamic, but it shows that the character has grown in that way, which is something I really did appreciate. One thing that I really like, from the first film, if you remember, one of Axel's best friends, Jenny, she goes in and she's giving them shit about the car he drives. Axel's upgraded the car. It's a subtle thing, but again, it shows his success. It shows that he's doing better than he was in the first film. So not something to draw a ton of attention to, but it's cool to see that Axel has evolved a little bit from the events of the first film. This film, it's pretty crazy. So Beverly Hills Cop came out December 5th, 1984. Beverly Hills Cop II came out May 20th, 1987. So a pretty quick turnaround, especially given the 80s. I mean, Beverly Hills Cop was, of course, a huge success, so why wouldn't you go ahead and do a second one? So one thing about this movie, it's always cool kind of going back and watching these movies I just haven't seen and going like, oh shit, I didn't know they were in here. And Bridget Nielsen being in this movie tripped me the fuck out. I had no idea that she was in here. Really caught me off guard. And I, again, so first off, she's tall too. She's like 6. Actually, I'm not sure. I'm gonna Google real quick. Let's see how high. She's 6'1". So she's fucking tall. And then Eddie Murphy's 5'9", and on top, well, okay, so let me back up a little bit. So Bridget Nielsen being in this, like I said, that's a trip enough as it is, but she's also wearing heels in this movie, and so she's probably 6'4" to Eddie Murphy's 5'9", and Tony Scott does a really great job of shooting them so that she looks so imposing. All the credit in the world for Scott for how she's filmed and framed. But this movie, the big plot on this movie is Lieutenant Bogomil, who again is played by Ronnie Cox, who, as I mentioned, from RoboCop, Total Recall, Deliverance. He goes ahead and makes this traffic stop because Bridget Nielsen's Carla Fry is on the side of the road asking for help because something's wrong with her car, and unfortunately ends up being a setup. He goes ahead and gets shot point blank range and left on the side of the road, like in a pretty brutal scene. Like the movie basically opens up with that. I just went, damn, okay. Like I love, like, again, I like this film more than the first one because I think each film ramps up the violence, and again, the violence never comes across as cool or sexy. It feels very deliberate. It feels very raw. It feels very real. That's one of the things that I've harped on Barry and just praised it for, is how unsexy the violence is and how it does feel very deliberate. And I think each film, and I will say this about even the third film, I think the third film, even though these are rated R, you're not seeing a ton of blood or anything like that. It's really more rated R because of the script, as far as like the cussing. But the violence in here, it feels darker than it does in the first film, and I think that's actually an enhancement to the film, given that this is someone else that Foley goes ahead and respects and clearly has a relationship with. To start off the film, we find out that Axel and Bogomil, they've gone ahead and kept in touch, and that they were actually going to go fishing together. But Bogomil goes ahead and stumbles upon this big plot as far as with these alphabet crimes, which is what the media ends up calling them. And so I actually really like the fact that they establish that they've been friends in between the events of the first film and the second film. In the moment that Foley hears, he actually goes ahead and sees it on the news that Bogomil's been shot and that he's in critical condition. I love the fact that it's not even a question of, am I going back to Beverly Hills? Like, he's on, like, the first flight out. Like, I love how it gives Foley this sense of morality that, with what we learn about him in the first film, as far as him not always being on the straight and narrow and, tweaking the law, as it were, the fact that he does have this moral compass when it comes to people that are his friends and people he can count on, it really does make you, it really does endear you more to Axel. And I think as these films go on and you get a sense of his moral compass and who Axel is as a person independent of the cop, I think these relationships really help define him. And seeing how quickly he is jump back into the fold is something that made me go, oh, hell yeah. And this is a benefit that you really do only get for a sequel, because if you listen to the review for the first Beverly Hills, which I'm assuming you have, if you haven't, it's up on the channel, that is how that's a benefit you only get from a sequel, because you've already laid your groundwork. We know who Axel Foley is. Now it's about evolving Axel and continuing to keep his story and just learn things about him. And so this film really takes off right out the gate. Shooting happens, Bogomil's in the hospital. Okay, let's go back to Beverly Hills. Like, the film really doesn't take a lot of time to do that, to go ahead and get into things, and I really appreciate it for that. Not only has Foley been in contact with Bogomil, he's actually been in contact with his daughter, Jan Bogomil, who's played by Alice Adair, who doesn't have a huge role in this, but I think she has more of a role than I actually expected, and she's kind of this nice, I don't want to say plot device, but I can't think of another term, but she's actually a very nice plot device in terms of her interactions with Foley, and kind of the heaviness of not knowing if her dad is going to pull through or anything. And I actually like the few conversations that they have that kind of act as a buffer, in particular between acts 2 and 3. I actually really liked her quite a bit, and that was actually a nice little monkey wrench that wasn't super necessary, I think, on paper, but the way that Tony Scott and company go ahead and execute it, it really does work. So because Foley ends up back in Beverly Hills, of course, he is reunited with Billy Rosewood and John Taggart, of course, played once again by Judge Reinhold and John Ashton. And what is fun about the dynamic this time around is, of course, yes, the trio's back together again, and really because of the seriousness of this crime, the fact that Bogomil was taken out, there's more of a heaviness to the dynamic, but I mean that's a good thing, because I would say there's more of a sense of urgency, not a heaviness, but there's more of a sense of urgency in the sense of trying to go ahead and solve this case, because there is a ticking clock element to this. These alphabet crimes are getting more violent, they're getting more intense, but they go ahead and they have this piece of shit who is really acting as a monkey wrench for the trio, and that monkey wrench is in the form of Alan Garfield's Harold Lutz, who goes ahead and takes over after Bogomil has been shot. Alan Garfield, rest in peace, sir. You know him from The Majestic, The Conversation, in Nashville, to name a few things. And he's just that swarmy little shit that you just want to punch in the face. Like, he plays his role so perfectly, and there is definitely this element of, I know I mentioned it in the first film with the villains, there's definitely this element of people like you don't belong here, because the first conversation he has with Foley, he's such a condescending shit, and And it's very much a trope, I would say, having the, the swarmy political, person who works in a police department, because those don't exist in real life. uh, but he plays his role to such perfection. I was just sitting there going, God, I want you to get shot. And I and I have to give Garfield a ton of credit for how he plays it. And I think in a weird way, even though he never comes out directly and says it, I think Harold Lutz being such an asshole actually makes Axel Foley appreciate Inspector Todd more, because Inspector Todd is definitely saying, motherfucker, if you get me fired, I'm gonna take you down with me. But he is still letting him largely kind of do what he wants. Lutz is basically looking, not even basically, he is looking for a reason to fire Rosewood and Taggart. After Bogomil gets shot, he flat out tells them that traffic duty, you're traffic duty cops, get the fuck out of here. Which, again, considering they helped solve this giant case in the first film, the fact that he's so ready to just go, nope, 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 get the fuck out of here, that's not a leader. That's someone with an agenda. And I appreciate the way that the film very clearly points that out and just really does a great job of making you hate the motherfucker. He's just as bad as the people who are committing the alphabet crimes. It's quite fascinating the way they go ahead and play him up. As a visual gag, I will say, Taggart ends up getting this kind of new, very Miami Vice looking outfit. And just from an outfit perspective, because I appreciate a good outfit, fucking wonderful. His outfit is fucking great. And you can see the influence, and you can really feel the influence of Foley on Rosewood and Taggart, because they're told to go ahead and report to being traffic cops, which obviously they don't want to fucking do. But considering all of their friendship and ties to Bogomil, Foley really doesn't have to convince them a lot to go ahead and help him and go ahead and help him out. I mean, fuck, they're even showing Foley evidence that they've gone ahead and gathered, which they definitely should not be doing. But given the circumstances, you get it. And again, that's the influence of Foley, that you kind of go, okay, like, these guys are clearly, friends, and it really does show in their dynamic. There is a point where they end up at this strip club, which was pretty funny. But when they go ahead and end up there, there's a shootout that occurs that, okay, I love my villains to not give a fuck. I don't like, not everyone needs to be Loki. Not everyone needs to have this, glorious purpose or be tortured by, their ambitions or anything like that. I like a villain sometimes that's just straight up a dick and will, shoot a cop, shoot a woman, shoot a kid, doesn't give a shit. Like, I love that sort of villain. And there's a shootout. They try to go ahead and gun down Foley, Rosewood, and Taggart, and it's just straight up in not broad daylight, but it's straight up at nighttime with people around. Don't give a fuck about civilian casualties at all. But it's one of those things where I went, good. I want to hate these people, and the film does a great job of giving you several reasons to hate these motherfuckers. As I mentioned, the violence in here, they do definitely ramp it up a bit. You get a little more blood. The action does feel, it feels more heavy. The actual shooting of Bogomil is handled really well, and when it happens, I was like, damn, I actually didn't, like, that actually caught me off guard. Bravo. But Tony Scott does a great job of making the fights and the shootings and everything have weight to them, which is something that I think is actually an improvement over the first film. Even though the first film definitely had that, it's actually done better here and executed better here because Tony Scott knows his fucking action. So I didn't mention Carla Fry, Bridget Nielsen's. I didn't mention her partner in this, who's played by Jürgen Prochnow. God, it's a cool ass name. Who plays Maxwell Dent. And one thing I will say, this guy just has a presence about him that I went, oh man, this guy makes you pay attention. You know him from the English Patient, Judge Dredd, and Dune, to name a few. He was also, oh yeah, he was in Hitman Agent 47. So he's done some stuff. But one thing I love about these Beverly Hills Cops movies is that everyone who interacts with Foley, who's a bad guy, clearly like just hates this motherfucker from jump. But part of it is not just because Foley is such a smartass and has that silver tongue, but because of Foley's tenacity. And given the personal stakes that Foley clearly has, given Bogomil getting shot, I love the sizing up process between Maxwell Dent and Axel in particular. Um, when Foley interacts with Carla Fry for the first time, he talks about like, oh, he even shoots kind of goes like, oh, how long would it take to shave those legs? And without missing a beat, she goes, oh, I get you're trying to be charming, but basically fuck off. And and that whole interaction is great. But then he goes right from interacting with Carla to interacting with Maxwell Dent at this high end shooting club, and they're already trying to figure out who Foley obviously is, but at the same time Foley is, you know, sizing them up, trying to figure out what their angle is. And once you actually figure out what's going on and why the whole Alphabet Crimes thing is happening, it's actually quite fascinating. I went, oh, I actually like that it's not just straight bank robbery, robbing banks for the sake of robbing banks. There's an actual good reason, not a good reason, but you know what I mean. There's an actual reason why these villains are doing this, and I actually thought that was a really nice, a nice twist once you actually go ahead and get there. I didn't mention it yet, but there is a scene at the Playboy Mansion that is fucking laugh out loud, fucking hilarious. And it just shows how petty Axel can be while still doing his job, but I appreciate the hell out of it. He goes ahead and ruins this Playboy Mansion party just to go ahead and fuck with Maxwell Dent and Carla, and that made me so happy that he was willing to go out of his way in a place where so many people would just be tongue-tied. To go out of his way to be such a douche to him in front of Hugh Hefner, in front of all these playmates, made me laugh really hard. And when they go ahead and show up there, Rosewood, Taggart, and Foley, without missing a beat, he makes this comment about how, oh yeah, let me step over your tongues real quick. This movie just, the punchlines are better for me. It is, there's a better balance. Like I think this does lean a little more dramatic than even the first one does. Given the shooting of Bogomil, but I don't know, the jokes work better for me here. I think the tandem of Foley, Rosenwood, and Taggart works better here. The violence is better handled, and the last shootout is really fucking cool. There's this great oncurring joke about Rosenwood, or about Rosewood, and his progression as far as the type of guns and stuff he has. There's even this point where Taggart makes this kind of offhand comment about, yeah, man, we're gonna have to have a conversation about the guns you have. What the fuck? But again, it shows that Rosewood went through this experience in the first film. You would probably be a little paranoid given what happened in the first film and given how many times you were shot at, and especially after the strip club shooting, it would actually make sense that Rosewood would be a little more strapped than he usually is. So, I gave the first film an A-. I would give this a solid A. I enjoyed the hell out of this. It's definitely something I'm going to revisit, and it's actually 5 minutes shorter than the first film, if memory serves. This one's an hour 40. This one's an hour 40. I think the first one's like an hour 45. Now I got to check because it's going to bother me. First one's an hour 45. And like I said, you really only get pacing with like this in a sequel once you've already laid out who these characters are and you're just looking to expand who they are. And this film does a great job of doing that. So yeah, this is a solid A for me. Really great sequel and something that I will definitely be revisiting before Beverly Hills Cop Axel F comes out. But yeah, Beverly Hills Cop 2. What did y'all think of it? Let me know in the comments. Go ahead and find, like, share, subscribe. You can find me on YouTube at The Real Pineapple. That's REEL Pineapple. You can follow me on Blue Sky at realpineapple.bsky.social. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. That's JHunter, and then REEL, and then Pineapple. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Black Shazam. And don't forget to follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/TheRealPineapple. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and rate the podcast. It definitely helps me out. You can pretty much find The Real Pineapple wherever you listen to podcasts. SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneUp, and Samsung Podcasts at The Real Pineapple. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Gonna have a review for Beverly Hills Cop 3, of course, coming up, as well as a review for Beverly Hills Cop Axel F when that hits on July 3rd. I'm really excited for that. I rewatched the teaser trailer and I was like, you know what? Given the context of watching the first three, I'm excited for this. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. Please stay safe out there, take care of each other, and never forget, as always, to keep it real.